Hello friends, I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is good. As promised yesterday, I want to talk about the book that I finished Friday night. So this technically counted for the wasted weekend, trash book. But it's important enough to talk about by itself. And this book is called Harmony Black from Craig Shaefer. This book was my introduction to this author. I've never heard of him before, never read anything, whatever. And apparently, he has like multiple series, and they're all intertwined some way, shape, or form. And I don't know why I got turned on to this particular series, but I did, and I went to his website, and he has like, here's entry points for my fiction, and this was one of them. He said, if you want, kind of a mystery, whatever. So I said, okay, cool, I'll pick this one, and I went with this one. And I will tell you off the bat, if you are one of those readers that likes to have all of the information, like you want to know all the references, maybe don't start here. Because there's definitely references in here that when I came across it the first time, how do I say this? There are times when you read an author and they'll just kind of allude to something that has happened previously. And as a reader, you go, cool, little bit of like, as if you know. But you're not aware, or maybe that reference doesn't really mean anything. It's just the author letting you know that this character has a history, this character has some background, this character is a living, breathing person that didn't just start on page one, right? They've been alive for years prior to this. So the first time I would encounter bits of information, it came across that way, just like, oh, she's done some stuff. She's a FBI agent who's done some stuff. But then, like by the third or fourth time that he referenced the same event, I started thinking, I think maybe that I missed something. And sure enough, this character, Harmony Black, which is a series about her, was in another story in another series. And so he's referencing that. And so the third or fourth or fifth time they brought it up, it was like, okay, I get it, right? So if you're one of those readers that you don't want to be put on the side, here's something that you don't know yet, maybe you should read, if you're going to read Harmony's story, maybe you should read other things that involved her first. Or, it doesn't matter. Because this book, the reason I wanted to talk about this book as a standalone piece instead of including it with the others is because this is exactly what I've been searching for. Not that I've been searching for female FBI agents. Oh, I should probably give you a little rundown. Harmony Black is an FBI agent. She is also a witch. So it's a little urban fantasy. And she gets recruited by a team, essentially, that deals with off-the-record stuff. And so they have entities that they are tracking and taking care of. And her team is the kind of investigative arm of this, and they're off there. Ultimately she's Black Book. She's assigned to an agent, or she's assigned to a boss that doesn't exist in a field office, but she really does this other stuff, right? This particular story is sort of a bit of a whodunit, but also a bit of an occult investigation. They're doing some occult stuff. And from what I understand, Craig's works deal with the idea of hell being a real place and demons being a real thing. And things that we associate with monsters and whatever are demons, right? So, when I say this is exactly what I've been looking for, I don't necessarily mean I've been looking for a female FBI agent witch story where she goes and does X-Files stuff. That's not really true. But what I'm talking about is everything else about the book. I've been saying for years, I've been trying to find like a modern pulp author, and I think this is it. To be fair, though, this is definitely better than pulp, right? This is definitely very well written. The author is an extremely good author. I very much appreciate his use of language, the structure, the pacing, the story, all that stuff. Very, very well written. By the way, I keep saying he because Craig Shaefer's the name on the book. The author has transitioned, and I believe her name is now Barbara or Beth or something like, I don't know, but she's decided to leave Craig as a thing. Like he is still the author of all of these books. So if you're sensitive to that sort of thing, just no, I'm not trying to be dismissive of her. It's just this is his book, right? So anyway, I've been looking for that pulpy adventure story, that kind of a little bit, just kind of like popcorn fiction. That's what this is. But he's a very good writer. The book is very well written and very well edited, and I didn't find a whole lot of mistakes. I found some typos. I find typos in everything that I read. I've not encountered an author yet that hasn't put typos in their books. But I really enjoyed this book. The pacing was great. The story was fun. The demon stuff maybe was a little bit more than I wanted. Like it was a little bit. There was a little bit more like. If you read the Dresden Files to compare this, the Dresden Files has the court of the Fae courts. The way that Craig uses hell in this book is very similar to those Fae courts, and the demons and their contracts are very similar to all of that. And maybe it was a little deeper and a little bit broader than I expected it to be. I was kind of hoping for just a generic boogeyman bad guy kind of situation, but it turned out to be this whatever. But it was fine. Like it was compelling enough that I didn't need to mind the fact that it was 7 levels of hell or whatever, and all that, all this other shit going on that didn't pertain to this particular book, but it does set up my expectations for future books. But the pacing, the story, all just, I loved it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It's not quite a 5-star book just because it is kind of breezy, trashy, kind of popcorn fiction. But it's again, one of those books I could sit down and just chill with and really enjoy my time with. The characters felt alive. They felt like they had stories. They weren't just flat objects to push a plot along. They were the source of the story, not necessarily the spooky situation that's going on in this book. I very, very, very much liked it. So, yeah. Check it out if you're into that sort of thing. From here on, I'm going to talk about spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, skip to the end or go somewhere else. I said boogeyman earlier. I didn't mean to, because that's literally the bad guy in this book. The boogeyman is, comes out of closets and steals babies. It's a boogeyman. And I felt like, so Harmony is a witch, but she seems to have very little witchy, like she's apparently a pretty powerful witch, but her magic is very, it takes time, and she needs her hands free. There's a whole lot of restrictions, which means she can't even get herself out of being bound by a rope or whatever, which is a situation that happens in this book. She can't really do a whole lot on the fly. She can do a couple things on the fly, but she really, needs to pour a circle of salt and all this other stuff to do anything with demons. Or she does banish a demon pretty easily at one point, but it was, her magic felt very, very restrictive. The spooky stuff magic felt just like this, a little bit too awesome, right? The boogeyman was being summoned by a person who tricked a demon and now is this amazing sorcerer, and he could do all these things instantaneously, whereas our heroine is just kind of I need to go grocery shopping before I can do magic, right? And this boogeyman's popping in and out of closets and stealing babies, and it was just like, that doesn't feel right. That feels a little bit weird. Other than that, though, honestly, the characters that are presented are the characters that are presented. Like I didn't feel deceived. There's not a bunch of red herrings, which I think is good for this type of story. Sometimes I like red herrings, but for this type of story, I felt like it was pleasant. There is this whole sequence with the main bad guy. So the main bad guy is like a 200-year-old sorcerer, and it's his ancestors who kind of are fielding the blame in today's world. And there's this whole sequence with their house, and that stuff was just kind of like, you know. But I think it'll come back around because they found this guy's lab, and I think Harmony. I'm hoping that she, kind of got some material out of that because it seemed like there was a whole lot of research there that she could dig through. That was kind of glossed over. There was definitely some moments where I felt like the character should have taken a breath and maybe looked into something, and instead they pushed the narrative, which fine for pacing, but I'm hoping that it'll come back to it because it felt a little rushed. Romance, there's a tiny little bit of romance. There's no like sexual or anything like that in this book, but there is a tiny little hint that her and one of the other characters, or maybe one of the side characters, not one of her team or anything like that, have a little moment and they share a little snuggle kind of thing. But this isn't a romance book, right? This is a mystery, detective, procedural, whatever. And it's very, very, very well done. Very much appreciated it. So I'm absolutely going to be reading more of these books. So I think there's 7 currently in the series, and I'll probably read all of them. And we'll see where it goes. But for right now, I'm very happy that I read this. Have you read it? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know sounds smart is tremulous. It is an adjective meaning timid and fearful. With tremulous mean, Anthony asked Gwendolyn if she would consent to joining of their families. Tremulous. Tremulous. Boy, was I tremulous when I had to ask Malia's father to marry her. It took me a while.